The text arrived at 9:47 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning, 3 hours before I was supposed to be at Mom's house. James, stop pretending to be successful on LinkedIn. It's embarrassing for the whole family. Just admit you're struggling like the rest of us and get a normal job. I stared at my phone, sitting in my sparsely furnished San Francisco apartment. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tomorrow morning, NeuroSync Technologies, my company, would go public. The company I'd started in this very apartment 7 years ago, with $8,000 in savings and nothing but a revolutionary idea for brain-computer interfaces. But James didn't know that. None of them did. I'd kept it quiet deliberately. After years of being dismissed at every family gathering, mocked for my computer games, asked when I'd get a real career, I'd simply stopped explaining. It was easier to let them believe I was struggling than to defend myself to people who would never understand. The skepticism started early. When I dropped out of my engineering PhD at 23, Dad said I was throwing away my future for some fantasy. At 26, living on ramen and coding 18-hour days, Mom told her friends I was going through a difficult phase. By 30, James had started introducing me as my brother who never really figured things out. I typed back a simple reply. See you at 1 p.m. The 90-minute drive to Sacramento was filled with last-minute IPO calls with my legal team. Nasdaq's opening bell tomorrow would value NeuroSync at $3.2 billion. My stake? Roughly 48%. When I pulled into the driveway at 12:58 p.m., James's brand new Tesla was already there. Of course it was. He'd spent 6 months bragging about his sales manager promotion at the dealership and the lease he could now afford. Inside, the house smelled like turkey and disappointment. "Oh, you actually came," Mom said, not looking up from the potatoes she was mashing. "Half expected you to cancel. You've been so distant." "Just busy with work," I answered quietly. James appeared from the living room, beer in hand, wearing a dealership logo polo. "Work?" He laughed. "Is that what we're calling it now? How's the coding, little brother? Built any good apps lately?" "It's going fine," I said. "Fine." He smirked. "Some of us have actual careers, you know. Responsibilities. I sold 36 cars last month." I nodded and moved toward the kitchen. By 1:15, Aunt Linda, Uncle Robert, and Cousin Michelle with her husband Brad had arrived. Small talk filled the living room until, inevitably, it turned on me. "So, David," Aunt Linda asked with fake interest. "Still doing the computer thing? Still working in tech?" "Yeah," I confirmed. "Tech?" Uncle Robert scoffed. "Everybody's in tech these days. What does that even mean, fixing computers? Programming websites?" James couldn't resist. He works from home. Writes code for some startup that probably doesn't pay him. Been at it 7 years now. He smirked. "Seriously, Dave, when are you gonna get a real job? You're 32. "I'm comfortable where I am," I said evenly. Michelle laughed. "Comfortable? In a tiny apartment in the most expensive city in America." "Rent control," I replied, which was technically true, though the $2.8 million in my checking account could have bought the building outright. At 2 p.m., Mom called everyone to dinner. The table was set with the good china. I ended up seated across from James, who'd claimed the head spot next to Dad. Dad arrived late, still in his consulting suit. "Good," he said curtly as he Saturday. "Maybe this year David has some actual news to share." Plates were passed. Then, predictably, it began. "So, David," Dad said, commanding the table. "Still working on your computer projects? How's that going?" "It's going well." "Well?" Dad repeated. Interesting choice of words. Does well mean you're making money, supporting yourself, building toward something? "I support myself just fine." James snorted into his wine. "Define fine." "You've been at this for a decade with nothing to show for it." "James sold 36 cars last month," Mom said proudly. "That's great," I answered genuinely. "Is it, though?" James leaned forward. "Or are you judging us for having real jobs while you chase a pipe dream?" "I'm not judging anyone." "You never are," Aunt Linda said sharply. "You're always so secretive. Makes people wonder what you're hiding." "Maybe he's embarrassed," Michelle offered. I would be, at 32, with no career. Uncle Robert chimed in. When I was your age, I had a mortgage and 2 kids. What do you have, David? An apartment. And a laptop. The interrogation spiraled. Dad leaned in. Face reality, David. You're not a tech entrepreneur. You're a dropout chasing fantasy. 90% of startups fail, and you've got nothing to show. You failed. The sooner you accept it, the sooner you can build a real life. The silence after his words was absolute. Their verdict was clear. I opened my mouth to reply. And then CNN's breaking news alert blasted from the living room TV. Michelle, curious, walked over. She froze. Oh my God. James, irritated at the interruption, stomped over. Then he froze too. On screen, the anchor's voice carried clearly into the dining room. Tech innovator David Chen's company, Neurosync Technologies, launches its highly anticipated IPO tomorrow with initial valuations reaching $3.2 billion. The brain-computer interface company has operated in stealth mode for 7 years. My LinkedIn photo filled the screen. The same one James had mocked 5 minutes earlier. One by one, the family crowded into the living room, staring in stunned silence. I stayed at the table, calmly cutting into my turkey. It was actually pretty good this year. The breaking point. $847 million in funding from top venture capital firms, the CNN anchor explained as B-roll footage showed our Palo Alto office building, the one I went to every day but had never once mentioned to my family. The IPO is expected to make David Chen one of the youngest billionaires in the technology sector. James appeared in the dining room doorway, his face drained of color. The smug grin he'd worn all evening was gone. If that's you, on CNN. They're saying you're worth about $1.54 billion. On paper, I said calmly. Once the stock opens tomorrow. Though the valuation could move depending on market conditions. Dad pushed past James, phone in hand, frantically typing, Neurosync Technologies, brain-computer interfaces. Series D, $847 million. His eyes darted across the screen. These reports are real. This is, you. Actually you. Aunt Linda appeared, pale. You've been working on this for 7 years, and you never said anything. You never asked what I was working on, I said evenly. You just assumed it was nothing. My phone buzzed, texts pouring in from colleagues, investors, friends watching the coverage. I silenced it and went back to cutting my turkey. Michelle was crying quietly in the doorway. We said all those things. And you were building a company. Yes. James fumbled for his phone, scrolling through articles exploding across tech media. Forbes has you listed as one of tomorrow's new billionaires. TechCrunch says Neurosync is the most important IPO of the year. Bloomberg, he looked up at me, devastated. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked simply. The silence that followed was answer enough. Uncle Robert finally spoke, his voice slow. The news says you've been in stealth mode. That was deliberate. You could have told us. But you chose not to. I chose to build something real instead of wasting energy defending myself to people who'd already decided I was a failure. Dad sank into his chair, looking 10 years older than he had 5 minutes ago. You let us believe you were struggling. You sat through dinners while we questioned everything, your choices, your career, your life. You never once defended yourself. Would my defense have mattered? I asked. Or would you just have found new ways to doubt me? Nobody spoke. Mom's phone rang. She answered automatically. Hello? Yes, this is Margaret Chin. You with CNN? You want to interview me? About David. She looked at me, her face twisted, fear, confusion, and something that might have been pride, if it weren't mixed with shame. I need to call you back, she said, hanging up. They want to interview you, I told them. Probably all of you. Usually these stories include family talking about how they supported the journey. James let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. Supported your journey? Jesus Christ. We called you a failure to your face today. I called you a failure today. Yes, I acknowledged. And you just sat there. You didn't defend yourself. You didn't believe me, I said. Why waste words? My phone buzzed again. A text from my communications director. CNN wants a family segment. Should I arrange it? I typed back, no. Aunt Linda collapsed into a chair. This is real. And we just spent an hour telling you to get a normal job. Oh God. What did we do? You shared your honest opinion, I said calmly. That's what family dinners are for. Honest communication. The sarcasm landed. Dad's phone rang. He answered, face pale. Hello, Richard. Yes, I'm watching. Yes, that's my son. You want to discuss consulting opportunities with NeuroSync? His voice faltered. I'll discuss it with him. He hung up, sick. They want me to leverage my relationship with you, he admitted quietly. They're calling it the opportunity of a lifetime. Why would I do that? I asked. You just spent the last hour telling me I had no career, no accomplishments. Why would someone like that help your firm? The words hit like physical blows. David, Mom pleaded, tears in her eyes. We didn't know. If we had. If you had known, you'd have treated me differently, I finished. Proud, supportive, interested. But you didn't know. So instead, you spent 7 years making me feel like a disappointment. Which version of you is real? I asked, scanning their faces. The one that respects success after CNN says it's real? Or the one that supports family unconditionally? Silence. Brad, my cousin's husband, spoke timidly. For what it's worth, I always thought you were working on something interesting. You had that intensity. Thank you, Brad, I said flatly. But you never asked. Never defended me. So your observation doesn't mean much. James buried his face in his hands. I texted you this morning. Told you to stop pretending. Said you were embarrassing us. And you just wrote, see you at 1 o'clock. Why didn't you correct me? Because you believed what you wanted to believe. Why let us think you were a failure? Because I learned something, I said, setting down my fork. The people who truly support you don't need proof. They don't wait for CNN or Forbes to validate you. They trust you because they know you, not because the market cap hits $3 billion. Mom cried openly. We do know you. You're our son, our brother. Do you? I asked. Because for 7 years you thought you knew me, and you were completely wrong. You mocked, you doubted, you dismissed. At no point did you consider that maybe I knew what I was doing. Dad's voice cracked. What do you want from us? Nothing, I said. That's what I've wanted all along. Nothing, just to be left alone to build what I believed in. Aunt Linda whispered, you're not going to forgive us. You made choices, I corrected. You chose to believe the worst about me. To mock instead of support. To assume failure instead of trust. Choices, not mistakes. My phone buzzed again. A text from my CFO, stock market going crazy. Trending everywhere. Pre-market numbers look huge. I smiled faintly. Nothing important, I said. Just work. The TV continued its segment, professors explaining our tech, testimonials from users whose lives had been changed. That's what you've been building? Uncle Robert asked softly. Yes. And the apartment you live in, the one we thought you could barely afford? I own the building. Bought it 2 years ago. Still live in the same unit because I like it. Mom gasped like the air had left her lungs. The Tesla in James's driveway costs $87,000, I added. Last year, my company's revenue was $340 million. I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you so you understand how completely wrong you were. James stared at his car keys like they'd turned to dust. So what happens now? Michelle asked quietly. Are you cutting us out forever? I'm going to finish my dinner, I said. Then drive back to San Francisco. Tomorrow, I have an IPO to manage. Next week, meetings with Fortune 500s. Next month, a conference in Singapore. Through it all, I'll keep doing what I've always done, working on what I believe in. Regardless of what anyone else thinks. And us? Dad asked. Where do we fit? I don't know, I admitted. Right now, I can't reconcile the family that raised me with the family that spent 7 years convinced I was a failure. I don't know which one is real. The anchor's voice echoed from the TV. Coming up, how David Chin became a billionaire while living like a college student. The remarkable story of stealth success. I stood. Dinner was excellent. Thank you for having me. David, wait. Mom cried. You can't just leave, we need to talk. What you need to do, I interrupted gently, is think about how you treat people before you know their net worth. Because the way you treated me tonight, that's who you really are. The way you're treating me now? That's just damage control. I grabbed my jacket. Will you come for Christmas? Mom begged. I don't know. I'll let you know. James stood suddenly. I'm sorry. God, David, I'm so sorry. Everything I said, all these years, I was wrong. You were honest, I corrected. That's worse. It means you genuinely believed I was a failure. That tells me everything I need to know about what you think when the cameras aren't rolling. Mom called out desperately, your father and I are proud of you. We always have been. I turned at the door. No. You've been embarrassed. Confused. Worried. But proud? That only arrived 20 minutes ago when Sean told you I mattered. Don't rewrite history. I stepped outside into the cool air. David. Dad's voice cracked. How do we fix this? I don't know if you can. The problem isn't what you said tonight. The problem is you believed it, for 7 years. And only CNN changed your mind. What does that say about us? I didn't wait for an answer. I drove away in my 6-year-old Honda Civic, the same car James once mocked as pathetic compared to his Tesla. In the rear view, I saw them still standing in the doorway, stunned, their reality overturned in 20 minutes. Good. Now they knew how it felt. My phone rang. Sarah, my co-founder. How'd it go? About how I expected, I said. You didn't tell them before the news broke. No. I wanted to see what they really thought of me. Turns out, I was right to keep my distance. You sound calm. I am. I made peace with their opinion years ago. Today just confirmed it. They never believed in me. They believed in success. And those are very different things. Are you going to reconcile? She asked. Maybe. Or maybe not. Right now, I'm focused on the IPO, the company, the work. Family can wait. If I ever decide it's worth it. For what it's worth, she said softly, we believed in you. The whole team. Always have. I know. And that's why we succeeded. Because we surrounded ourselves with people who didn't need CNN to tell them it was real. I hung up, driving into the fading light toward San Francisco, toward the life I'd built, despite everything. Behind me, my family was still standing in that doorway, stunned and broken. But that was their problem. I had an IPO to launch.